Hello everyone, this is the second of a series of videos on Attack on Titan that will eventually cover everything. Although each video can be watched in isolation, there will be references here and there to certain ideas that are slowly being built upon. Most importantly, this chart. The world of Attack on Titan is inherently cruel and deeply unjust. And so much of the conflict in the story arises from this clash of ideals. As shown in the graph, the world has divided itself into various philosophies, each aimed at answering the world's problems, what they believe is the fix to it. And so one by one, in each video of the series, we will be going through every major idea to see where that leads us. The first video focused on the philosophy of ignorance, submitting yourself to institutions on faith. This video will focus on comfort and change. Ultimately, you can watch whichever sections you're interested in or join along the journey from the beginning. Either way, thank you for watching. To Eren, a life lived in comfort and ignorance is unacceptable.
それじゃまるで家畜じゃないか。
There's a fire in him, and that fiery passion ironically makes him the perfect poster boy for these propagandistic openings. Because part of the military's rhetoric is to reject the comfort that keeps the masses satisfied within these walls. For the few who see past that comfort, their fiery rage is reflected here. Just as the villains who stand between them and their goals are described as the swine who mock the will to advance, those who wish not to fight and remain within the walls are held in similar contempt. Their peace described as the peace of cattle, their prosperity the prosperity of deception, and their freedom the freedom of the dead. But is it being cattle or is it being smart? Jean Kirstein acts as the counter to Eren's ideals, and they butt heads because of it. It is quite the dilemma. Here we have the walls. Outside the walls are man-eating titans. So not a great place to be, but beyond that, you might also find flaming water, lands made of ice, and fields of sand spread wide. The mysteries of the world are out there, including its dangers. So does one take the risk and venture outside? Inside the walls isn't perfect, but there's familiarity and comfort. It's a dilemma, a conflict between comfort and change. In this section, we will explore this argument along with all its nuances through 3 particular conflicts. Eren and Jean start off on the wrong foot because of this dichotomy. Eren's stance is pretty clear-cut. Joining the military police and moving into the inner walls is something he never even fathomed.
Boy, Eren!
Eren is just built different when it comes to willpower. Something that Shadis, Levi, Reiner, Mikasa, Armin, and Jean all make note of. The very first lines of the entire series comment on the attack on Shiganshina, about how humanity was reminded of the fear of the Titans. But then it cuts to Eren, because what Eren felt in that moment wasn't fear, but humiliation. So Eren's desire for change is pretty obvious. It is his most prominent trait, and there are a million examples I can point to for that. So, how about, rather than pointing you to what you already know, we instead look at the more direct relationship between Eren and comfort? Because even though Eren seems to have outright rejected it, comfort is more than that. Not just a choice, but a temptation that lies underneath the surface. All the while calling out to you, telling you you've done enough. So was there a moment where the whispers of comfort tempted him? In total, there are 2 such instances. Both occur very early on in the series to a very young Eren, perhaps telling us how that shaped him so. The first instance occurs at Trost, when Eren is tasked with plugging the hole in the broken wall, but having just achieved these powers, he isn't able to control the Titan. Upon transforming, Eren enters this beautiful dream, back in his home with his father, mother, and Mikasa. While in reality, his Titan goes on a rampage, even attacking Mikasa, leaving her with a scar that remains for the rest of her life. By this point, Eren has already lost his loved ones and has quite literally been in the belly of the beast. It's been one disaster after another with no home to return to. So this is very much like a dream. It wouldn't hurt to just stay here. Armin makes several pleas to Eren. None get through to him. That is, until Armin reminds Eren of his true dream. That day, just as they saw in his book, up and beyond the walls waiting for them is flaming water, lands made of ice, and fields of sand spread wide. To give in to this temptation means forsaking that dream. And so, even after everything he's been through, Eren rejects this false paradise. Armin asks Eren why. Why is he so desperate for that freedom? Why can't he rest until he's attained it?
どうしてエレンは外の世界に行きたいと思ったの？
どうしてだって、そんなの決まってんだろ。俺がこの世に生まれたからだ。
There's no reason needed. Freedom is everyone's birthright, and Eren is simply fighting for that right. This first instance directly pits Eren's desire for comfort against his desire for change. And it shows us that, yes, Eren II desires comfort. It's just that his desire for change and his dream of freedom completely usurps it. It's a powerful, even inspiring scene, conveying all of what Eren is about and forcing you to respect him. However, this second instance carries with it a much darker tone. Chapter 26 of Attack on Titan is titled The Easy Path. As the female Titan slaughters the other soldiers, Eren is given a choice. Fight alone or rely on his comrades to take care of her.
Eren!
In both the anime and the manga, after Eren's comrades beg him to trust them, he makes the choice to do so. However, what follows after is a short sequence found only in the manga. Eren wonders why he made this choice.
みんなリヴァイ兵長に指名された調査兵団きっての精鋭。
It wasn't because of their strength.
エレン、お前と俺たちとの判断の相違は経験則に基づくものだ。
Or their experience.
信じて。
Not because he trusted them either. He chose them because he wanted their bond. Eren, after transforming into a titan, had been separated from his friends and treated like a monster by the state, by his mentors, and also by his squad.
もしまた暴れでもしたら、俺は今回リヴァイ班に殺されるかもしれないのか。
Eren yearned for the warmth of community, where he could rely on others and where they could trust him. And because of that desire, he chose to let them die. Eren calls a decision like that the easy path. When Eren's gamble fails, it leaves a big scar on his psyche. Not just because he chose wrong, but also because he chose it for the wrong reasons. Ultimately, in the two moments where Eren gives in to comfort, he's left with deep, deep regret. And so after this test, even more so than ever before, Eren proves himself to be a man who utterly rejects comfort.
エレン、もういい。俺はもう終わりにしたい。これ以上、誰も苦しめなくていい。これ以上、苦しまなくていい。もういいだろう。眠れ。
But now, at the end of it all, comes an uncomfortable truth. Eren's drive is clearly infectious. In fact, in the first days as trainees, he attracts a lot of people to his ideas. Eren's dream of joining the Survey Corps and leaving the walls, everyone seems to be taken by. However, years later, when it comes time to actually choose,
勝てるわけない。
Eren realizes he is very much the minority, that almost everyone else down the line will eventually choose the path of safety and comfort. What Eren felt in this moment was loneliness, and it's only the beginning of a much heavier realization that no one will ever be able to match his dreams nor his will to fight for it. And that's terrifying, because if he ever were to reach that pinnacle, it would have to be alone. Just as Eren has a reputation of being loud and impulsive, Jean earns the reputation of being arrogant, annoying, and blunt.
俺は正直者なんでね。
Being one to always speak his mind, Jean is the one who challenges Eren the most in these earliest episodes. So just as Eren's character offers an exploration on the ones who seek change, one would expect Jean to portray the one who seeks comfort. However, the layers and nuances of his character blossom into something more.
Jean, 外で待ってる。
It takes years for Jean to admit it, but
そんなクソ野郎を俺は妬んだ。かっこよかったから。
for a guy who preaches so much about living a comfy life, he sure does daydream a lot about getting the girl, being admired by his peers, ranking first, and being the hero. There's a fire in him. There actually exists a complete alternate version of Kuren no Yumiya, which replaces Eren with Jean. And that's all it needs to do to communicate Jean's secret desire to be the protagonist. Jean doesn't really want to stay locked up. He's running away. This is why Jean is often seen as the most relatable character. His contradictions, his childish dreams, his fears, and how it all acts out, there's an honesty to all of it. Jean is special because he's so normal.
怒らずに聞いてほしいんだけど、ジャンは強い人ではないから、弱い人の気持ちがよく理解できる。現状を正しく認識することに長けているから。ジャンの指示は正しかった。だから僕は飛べたし、こうして生きている。
But it says a lot that the thing that finally caused Jean to eventually reject the inner walls and join the Survey Corps were none of these. He did it to honor his friend.
お前マルコ。
俺は調査兵団になる。
When push comes to shove for Jean, out of all his insecurities, out of all of his desires, it's this aspect that's always shined through. This moment in particular is ironic as all hell, as Jean cannot believe that these soldiers would sit here and hide while their fellow comrades are out there dying.
こいつらだ！俺たちを見捨てやがったのはてめえらのせいで余計に人が死んでんだぞ！
Following Marco's death, a subtle but important change occurs in Jean as he finally takes his friend's advice and starts to be more honest with himself.
は？嫌に決まってんだろ。調査兵団なんて。
Now focused on humanity's survival, he swallows his pride and concedes to Eren.
エレン！お前、本当に頼むぞ！
Jean's story will take flight from here on, and we'll get to that soon enough, but our takeaways from this dynamic are that there are in fact many who would prefer a more exciting life, but very few ever really commit to it. Most opt for comfort anyway, not out of desire, but out of fear, and are willing to convince themselves otherwise. With that, we've concluded just the first relationship, meaning there's still more to explore here. As such, this second dynamic presents us with a case where the opposite is true. Keith Shadis is a man obsessed with being special. But what does it mean to be special? What would one have to do to become special? Well, surely he who ventures the world outside, conquering all that lies beyond, is most deserving of that title. So Shadis fully commits himself to it, emerges as the commander of the Survey Corps, and leads ventures outside the walls. Except, his plans only begin to fall apart from there on. Not only do the expeditions under his command continue to end in failure, preoccupied with his dreams, Shadis also loses the woman he loves. The person she marries saves the town from a plague and is hailed as a hero. Maybe it's him who's special. Soon after, Shadis sees that a much younger, much stronger leader is ready to take the helm. Maybe it's him who's special.
エルヴィン、団長をやってくれるか。
Shadis wonders if he ever had what it took to stand among these men.
キーさん
Carla Yeager is a loving mother and a dedicated housewife. That's about it. This is the life she'll ever live, and the concept of venturing beyond the walls is just bizarre to her.
ダメだからね調査兵団なんてバカな真似
And when she expresses as much to Keith,
このまま 死ぬまで続けるつもりですか？
He finally loses it.
バカだって。俺には家畜でも平気でいられる人間の方がよっぽど間抜けに見えるね。
なぜ凡人は何もせず死ぬまで生きていられるかわかるか。まず想像力に乏しいからだ。その結果何も成し得ずただクソを垂らしただけの人生を恥じることもない。
Carla, throughout the series, has always been a part of other people's stories, with her only role being that of an object of desire or an object for motivation. So, in a meta-textual sense, when Shadis bursts into this rant about her, it can also be read as Shadis accusing Carla of being a plot device with no real ambitions or depth of her own. Except, that is the depth.
特別じゃなきゃいけないんですか？
Carla is content with her life. She'll be content even if her whole life remains like this. And she'd be fine even if Eren never goes on to achieve something great. As for why,
人より優れていなくたって、この子はもう偉いんです。この世界に生まれてきてくれたんだから。
there's no reason needed. Carla has everything she could ever want right here, in the ones she loves. This dynamic should clarify some points the previous one may have implied. That there are people who would genuinely choose family and comfort over a desire for change. That not everyone who remains within the walls does it out of fear. And most importantly, you don't need to venture outside the walls to prove your worth, or to gain validation, or to find meaning. You can very well find it right at home. The two relationships we've discussed so far both ended up veering off in different directions. In the end, both Eren and John opted to join the Survey Corps. Both Carla and Keith opted to stay within the walls. However, the final pair of this video will follow their threads through to the end, and it'll paint what is the most likely scenario. Hitch and Marlo's dynamic is an interesting one. There are a lot of romantic undertones there, but the two couldn't be any more unlike each other. Marlo is seen as this straight-laced, awkward dude with a bowl cut for some reason, while Hitch is this pretty, cool girl who gets all the boys. Marlo's upfront attitude often lands him in trouble, whereas Hitch is cunning and knows what cards to play.
いや、すみませんね。バカがご迷惑かけちゃったみたいで。こっちできっちり調教しときますんで。それともこれ以上問題にされますか?
But of course, the most important difference between them is that Marlo is willing to take risks and bring great changes to the world, while Hitch would rather have safety and comfort. There's no secret desire twist this time around. Genuinely, this is what both of them want. Marlo's passions burn bright, bright enough to remind both Jean and Annie of a certain someone. And although Hitch seems sarcastic and uncaring, she's really anything but. It's just that Hitch never really buys into any of the propaganda. In fact, she's one of the few who saw the insanity in it, and so just tried to keep her own self safe. But unlike certain others, fear isn't tying her down. When the time comes, Hitch can be surprisingly brave.
あなたたちのせいでストエスクの人民が100人以上死にました。あなたたちは自分が正義の味方のつもりなのかもしれませんが、被害者やその家族は突然地獄に落とされたんですよ。
There's nuance to both these characters, and that's probably why they grew so close, despite their stark differences. Marlo is straightforward, but that doesn't mean he's not perceptive.
彼は俺を試しただけだ。 俺は入る兵団を間違えたよ。
この世界の不正を正すことができるのなら俺は何だってやります。
Marlo joined the military police to bring change from within, but only ends up regretting it. And so in a move that was pretty much inevitable, he leaves Hitch and the military police behind and joins the Survey Corps. Hitch and Marlo were always going to choose separate paths. Their story was always going to diverge like this. So all that's left to do is to finally ask, who chose better? Time and time again, we've been told that striving for greatness comes with risk. But the weight of that risk is never fully realized until this moment. This, in plain sight, is the harsh reality, the most likely scenario. Most people just don't make it.
Hitch 来てたのか。マルロは最後まで勇敢だったよ。そうだろフロック、話してやれ。
ああ、マルロ・フロイデンベルクは俺と同じキューボ入団の新兵で、その中でも俺たちをよくまとめてくれた。現場は絶望的で、調査兵団は全滅寸前まで追い詰められた。みんなおじけづいてどうにもならなかった時も、あいつだけは仲間を鼓舞し続けた。あいつはすごいやつだったよ。でも最後はあそこに行ったことを後悔しただろう。
In his final moments, Marlo remembered Hitch. He thought that, knowing her, she'd still be sleeping in right about now.
いいなぁ。わからない。なんで俺が今頃。
So it seems as though Hitch made the right choice. She's alive at least. But is Hitch really happy? Half a decade later, another cataclysmic event has occurred. And in its wake, we see Hitch on duty, trying to salvage what's left. 5 years ago, Hitch was called in to deal with the aftermath of the battle in Stohes, an event that traumatized her. And yet, here she is again, in that same role. History unfolds while Hitch remains in the cleanup crew. Meanwhile, Annie and the others make plans for a counterattack, leaving Hitch behind with just a note goodbye. And that's where her story ends. The lesson here is life is shit. Because if you ask anyone what they actually want, they would tell you they would actually rather have both. Because both are desirable. Even Hitch and Marlo, who had the most clear-cut motivations, still ended up having regrets. This is the true unfair reality that the world has us choose.
ヒッチは今頃何を。いや、あいつはまだ寝てるか。
And so, we have now completed 2 sections of this chart, concluding what I have dubbed Phase 1 of this series. When I first introduced the chart, I dropped a lot of information at once, but with the promise that this will all make sense as we go on. Well, now things should start making sense. Each video of this series is centered around a particular theme, and the characters featured are the ones who best explore that theme. But there's also some logic to the sequence we've been following. The first video focused on simple binary ideas, but the second video introduced a dilemma. Two conflicting ideas battling it out with each other. And that's the idea. Each section snowballing into the next, increasing in complexity. Phase 1 has laid down the fundamental building blocks and got the ball rolling. Phase 2 is where we really get into it. 3 videos continuing the exploration of dilemmas, but with each featuring one of the main trio and their antithesis as they battle it out in a clash of ideals.
何も捨てることができない人には何も変えることはできない。
この世界は残酷だ。そしてとても美しい。
死んでも死んだ後も進み続